Ladies and gentlemen, everybody loves a good mage inside Watcher of Realms, a good magic DPS, if you will, and my god, we're going to be talking about someone who is exactly that today. This is going to be my guide slash review slash showcase slash whatever on Anora. So she was a limited time hero that was available for summoning twice now. So she's one of the few limited times that's come back and done another rotation. So if you got her the first time, you may be lucky enough to have her A1. If you're like me, you didn't go for her, but, you know, it is what it is. So I went for her the first time. I got her because I recognized how good she was, but I didn't go for her the second time. I went for Talon instead because I didn't think her A1 was worth it over Talon. And then if you watch my Talon shard summoning video, you'll know I didn't get Talon. So it is what it is. But anyways, we're talking about Anora. You may wonder why she looks weird. This is what she looks like by default, and I just get flashbanged every time I open this version of the skin. So I must say I definitely like the one with a little bit more class a bit better. I think that skins or even just heroes by default should be a little bit more like this, where they're classy, they're eloquent, but they still have that, you know, kind of gotcha look to them, right? It's just a lot better than just in your face and super obvious, in my opinion at least. But that being said, what does she do? Let's go ahead and take a look into her kit. So she has a talent. When she's deployed, she summons labor. Now I have Ymrit, so I have the bond skill, which is something not everybody will have, so we'll talk about that. The hero and labor, which is her summon, so it's going to inherit 100% of the master's attributes and assists the master in attacking enemies in range. Each attack deals 90% AoE magic damage up to 8 enemies. Essentially what this is she attacks people, but then she also has a summon, a little dragon, who's going to go ahead and attack people as well. They permanently gain Sanctity, so this is immune to most buffs and debuffs. This is a good thing, but also a bad thing, because it means that she is immune to, for example, rage regen that doesn't come from her exclusive artifact, right? It also means that she is immune to a lot of, like, you know, inspiration and those sorts of things as well. But on the plus side, she's immune to, like, heal reductions and, you know, damage reductions and all that sort of good stuff. Upon the death of an allied summon, Labor gains 1 stack of Ancient Spirit, stacking up to 6 times. Each stack increases Labor's attack by 3%. So Labor cannot die. He's a flying dragon that cannot take hits. He's like a little dragon, or if you have the skin, he's a big dragon, right? So he can't take hits, he can't die. But if you're running like a Zarus with Anora, if you're running a Beatrix, if you're running, say for example, like a Sun Wukong that everybody should have at this point, it is very, very strong because it can increase his attack. Now, one important thing to say about this, though, where she's different from some other summoners, is labor gets placed at the start of the fight. And that is crucial because it means that labor cannot benefit from Soulbound Arcana or any other sort of damage increasing abilities as the fight goes on. So Anora can absolutely benefit from it, but her summon labor will not. That being said, her basic attack deals 100% AoE magic damage to up to 5 enemies, which is very strong. She then has a passive. When attacking, labor has a 20% chance to generate noxious breath. So this is a 20% magic damage per second to up to 8 enemies in range. Airborne units take half the damage instead. So this is essentially just kind of like a poison, if you want to think of it that way. That's not really a poison, that stacks on top, so it's very strong. When the ultimate is triggered, generates noxious breath immediately. So it's a guaranteed proc of this, right? Another passive here, Agitation. When on the battlefield, increases the attack of labor by 15% and grants damage increase, which is damage plus 10% to other allied summons. So again, she's very good for powering up other summoners on your team. So if you have those Sun Wukongs, those Beatrix, right, she's going to help out a lot with that. We have an ultimate now, which will be the final part of her kit if you don't have the bond skill. When activated, labor immediately deals 360% AoE damage to up to 10 enemies in range. So he flies up, he does a big slam into the ground, as you can see from the little skill excerpt here, right? It's not immediate, there's a bit of a charge up to it. Then, during the ultimate, increases labor's damage by 150% and expands both its attack range and damage range, lasting for 20 seconds. And this is on a 800 cost, which is very low as far as ultimates go. And you can see during the ultimate, she's going to get like a Vortex Hollow range, right? So it's absolutely insane. She's so good for GVG. She's so good for, you know, basically anywhere you need DPS. We have a passive Bond skill now, which is the Arise My Hero. Obtain Hero Ymrit to unlock the following bonus effect. Summons Labor Ice instead of Labor. So this is going to be inheriting 100% of her abilities, deals a 15% increased damage to controlled enemies. Each attack is going to deal 110% rather AoE damage, with a 30% chance to inflict Winter's Bite for 3 seconds. Now, unfortunately, I can't just remove Ymrit from my account. Not like I'd want to do that anyways, not gonna lie. But it does mean that she's going to be a little bit stronger by default than the version you might have. So it is what it is. Let's go ahead and take a look at Awakenings. A1. When Noxious Breath is generated, it immediately inflicts Immobilized State on up to 8 enemies. So this is basically just immobilized. You can't move for 2 full seconds. That's insane. A2, 300 attack. A3, Labor ignores 20% of enemies' magic resistance. Also a pretty insane awakening. A4, penetration plus 8%. And finally, the A5, enemies on tiles affected by Noxious Breath receive 20% increased damage from both the hero and Labor. So if you're doing Noxious Breath procs to the enemies every time she pops her ultimate, those sorts of things, they're going to receive 20% extra damage, which is pretty crazy. In terms of her skills, I do have her fully skilled out. And in terms of her stats, this is how we have her built. So total attributes, we're looking at 19,000, almost 19,500 on the attack. We're looking at 370 on the attack speed, which brings her down to a nice little 2.0 second interval. We have 118 and 272 on the crit rate and crit damage with 23% rage regen, which does not matter anyways, because she cannot really regenerate the rage that way. Although, like I say, it does come from her artifact. So her artifact, I have the exclusive on her, which is the Scepter of Impiety, which increases her attack by 16% after she casts her ultimate. Labor's AoE damage permanently increases by 5%, stacking up to 3 times, which is 15%. When Labor kills an enemy, restores 3% rage for Anora. This effect can trigger 1 time every 3 seconds. So this is how you cycle her super quickly. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the gear. As I always say, I am a 100% free-to-play player inside the game. I've not even purchased any skins, as tempting as it might be, so keep that in mind with the build that I'm showing you. On the left-hand side, we have some pretty crazy gear here, right? It's obviously not min-maxed or anything like that, though. I'm not a whale, I'm not a kraken, so I don't have min-maxed gear on every single slot like you might expect to see. But as you can see, we have triple attack bonus. That's why she's so high, and I would actually recommend doing that. In terms of the gear sets, I always talk you guys through this too, what you want to build her in regardless where you are inside the game. As with any sort of a DPS unit, you're looking Wicked Vengeance, Warlord, you're looking Calamity, Whirlwind, and Annihilating Might. Those are going to be the strongest left-hand gear pieces for you to build her in. I wouldn't necessarily recommend focusing on set bonuses for the tier 2, or rather the tier 1 sets, sorry, unless you can get really good stats along with really good sets. So don't give up crit rate or crit damage or attack just to get a Whirlwind bonus, right? Because that attack is generally going to be more worth it. For the right-hand side, same kind of thing. You're building her inside any sort of DPS set. So I think Infernal Roar is the way to go. You could also build her, of course, inside Cataclysm. Ageless Wrath is going to be very strong as well. Soulbound Arcana is going to be decent for Anora herself, but keep in mind that her summon Labor will not benefit from this in any way. So just, you know, something to be aware of. And then for tier 1, they're all kind of doo-doo anyway, so if you're running tier 1 gear, just kind of throw on whatever has the best stats, right? Don't worry too much about the set bonuses. So in terms of the right-hand side gear, I would recommend triple attack bonus, depending on where you're trying to use her. You can obviously get some use out of her in pretty much any content inside the game. Where I'm going to be showcasing her is, of course, inside Gear Raid 1, Stage 21, with Power of Dominance on, just so we can get through it nice and quick, as always. So we're going to go ahead and start the fight and really just show you what she's all about. Now, I will pause and talk through this real quick because I did actually forget to talk about the artifacts. So, if you don't have her exclusive artifact, which everybody should have at least 1 copy, because it was in the event shop, if you don't have it, first of all, go get farming artifact material raids so that you can get it. But all jokes aside, if you don't have it, you're going to want to build her inside Tear of Twilight. That's going to be the next best option for her, essentially, so she can get that post-deployment attack boost, right? So, Tear of Twilight, super strong. We're going to place Anora. We're going to place Diao Chan. We're going to activate Diao Chan so she goes into her alternate form. As soon as we're able, we're going to go ahead and place down Borius, and this is going to be the essentially the strategy that we use, is the Borius and Anora combination. Now, keep in mind that generally in this strategy, I would be using a Laurel to place down here and cycle out. I would be using an Eloin for her rage boosting, right? But you'll really start to see, as the battle goes on, Anora just does not gain benefits from the rage regen offered by these other heroes. So she's definitely not going to be a person that you're running alongside a Laurel or something like that, which is a bit disappointing that you can't cycle like that. But it's also kind of nice because it means there's less manual actions involved with her work, right? So that being said, she is still just kind of getting her, you know, her rage back as normal. So I might have been misleading earlier when I said she can't regenerate rage any other way. She can regenerate rage normally as any hero, but you can't use like these other kind of regeneration tactics that you'd see. So for example, Borius is just lapping her in terms of the rage regen, and that's mainly going to be because of Eloin, right? And if we take a look for Gear Raid 1, for example, if you look at her ult range, she can cover the entire thing, which is crazy. And so what does that mean? Well, a lot of times if you place a mage, so for example, if I place like a Praetus here, right, you can see that he can't necessarily reach the whole wall. But with Anora, even if she's placed on this second tile, she's still going to be able to reach the whole wall, which is just absolutely insane. I am kind of hesitant to place down like a Dahlia or something like that, just because it is going to take away some damage from Anora, and this is the Anora showcase, right? But it is what it is. We're also going to go ahead and place down Valkyria here. We get the anti-heals coming in from the Borius, which is quite nice. I'm going to pop Eloin as well, just to make sure they stay alive, and then we're going to pop their ults, as well as the Dahlia and the Valkyria ults, right? So we're going to get some big DPS coming in here, and we're going to clear out this wave without really too much of a question. Dahlia is really good for placing the slows and some extra damage and whatnot, and then obviously Anora is good for just mopping everybody up. So really the only place that Anora kind of lacks inside her kit, which isn't even really lacking per se, is she doesn't have obviously the same cycling capabilities with like a Laurel or an Eloin, right? So you can't cycle her ults as fast as you would some other heroes. And she also doesn't have any sort of like execution abilities. So for example, Vierna or Comet, they instantly execute enemies they're attacking when the enemy is below a certain HP threshold. So that's very nice for getting through like, you know, Gear Raid 1 very quickly, for example. It's I think I actually run Comet in my main team. It's either Comet or Ingrid that I use, essentially. But it makes it just, you know, a walk in the park. And it, for example, in the case of, like, Vierna, it's very good for using her inside, like, the gear dungeons, because she's going to be able to just execute the enemies coming at her. So Anora does kind of lack that, which, you know, is a bit of a shame. But then again, she has so much damage and so much utility inside her kit that I don't think she really needs it to be on par with like some of the other, you know, really good mages inside the game. We're going to go ahead, wait for them to all walk in here. We're going to pop everybody's ults once again, right? Get everybody just doing as much DPS as possible. You can see because of Valkyria and Anora's ultimates, we actually have the boss down to like 50% HP already, 58% HP, which is pretty crazy. Very reminiscent of when I ran Phelan inside this stage as well. I have a video of that up on my channel, so make sure to go check it out. We are probably going to need a second ult cycle here as well with the Anora, because it looks like we're not quite going to be able to finish them off with the first ult. So the wall is still doing perfectly fine, though. We're like, you know, above 75%. You can see those noxious breaths are proccing too. So this looks like a poison or whatnot, but that's actually the noxious breath there that's doing all that damage. So that's labor essentially proccing that. You can see there's like a 10% rage difference between the two of them as well. So we'll go ahead and pop everybody here again now that we have the Borius anti-heals out. And as always, as soon as the last mob dies is when I'll go ahead and end this, because I don't want to kill the boss. I just want to show you the damage that they're capable of doing, essentially, to the mobs, right? So, obviously, if we allowed them to kill the boss, the damage numbers would be pretty similar. It's just, you know, there'd be more of it. But I want to show you what they're capable of in just strictly a flat-out run inside the stage. So, when it comes to stats, you can see that Anora did over double the DPS of Borius, triple the DPS of our Valkyria, and then, like, you know, quadruple to whatever the next one is, the damage of Dahlia. So she has very, very strong damage output. I'll show you those other heroes as well real quick, right? So let's go ahead and take a look at Borius. He's definitely not built as well, but he is A1. He's inside Ageless Wrath, and he does have some decent stats on him as well, right? So he's definitely built very, very solidly for that particular piece of content. You can really just see how much extra damage she was able to output, which is insane. Let's go back to her real quick, go to the artifact here, and I'll walk you through the other options. So Tear of Twilight is probably the best way to go if you don't have her exclusive. Something like Unfortunate Skull would be very strong as well for that AoE damage boost. If you are, going inside Gear Raid 1 and you're just struggling to clear it, you could potentially use a Tidal Ring would be very strong for that as well. Basically anything that's going to just boost your damage, right? So, you could also use like a Tome of Horror. Any sort of a mythic artifact is going to be very solid, even if it's just a stat stick, if nothing else, right? So some very solid options there. She's not going to benefit from the Nightmare Samsara, which is a bit of a shame. However, she could benefit from some of these other things, right? So, for example, you could put her inside the Watchguard's Wisdom for every 1% increase in rage. So as her rage increases, she's essentially just going to have an extra chance of proccing a basic attack, which would be very, very strong. Let's go ahead. Let's take a look inside the arena here. So I don't know actually if she's in any of like the top AoE DPS teams. I would have to think probably not, because we're not really, focused on having crazy amounts of like mages inside the AoE DPS. Oddly enough, we're more so focused. She does make it into Platinum, so she is definitely still here. We'll take a look at AoE though. We're more so focused on just using Ingrid and blowing everything up nice and quick, right? So that's kind of the strat everybody goes with. We'll run her here though without any sort of like a Lord ability or anything like that. And let me put some lipstick on real quick while I do it. If you have dry lips, this is not a sponsored segment, but Burt's Bees, I don't know if it's just a Canadian thing, but Burt's Bees is a very, very solid chapstick, essentially. They got some good flavors, does a very good job. Burt's Bees should sponsor me. That'd be pretty cool. Avoid your dry lips, people. We're going to place down Anora down here so she can get a nice little range over the entire area. You can see her dragon looks absolutely badass with this skin as well. You can see the Winter's Bite going off there. And we don't have like a Diao Chan or anything like that, right? So she is essentially just going to be doing all this damage herself, which is pretty strong. So let's go ahead, wait for this wave to come in, and then we'll do like a nice little burst and just show you how strong she is at getting this done. So we'll go ahead and do the ultimate. Boom! You can see she almost one-shot all of them when her ultimate procced, and then just like that, like 2 seconds later, the entire wave is down. So she is very, very strong when it comes to just damage output and usability. The areas I think she's best is obviously Gear Raid 1. She's absolutely fantastic for that. Gear Dungeon 1, she's also decent as well. You're not really going to be using her, though, inside like Semra. So that area of late game content, she's not the most useful, but inside Guild War, you are actually going to be using her a lot as well. So we're getting absolutely clapped by Darkside, so it's probably not the best time to showcase it, but as you can see, I don't actually use her anymore for one reason. No, sorry, I do. I wasn't used to looking at the skin. So I do actually have Anora in this team as well. Anora and then Ymrit in there. So I'll go ahead and do probably a little battle record here and actually show you how it works. I'll show you one of the ones I won, because then you can get a decent idea how it's supposed to work, essentially. But especially with our ultimate proccing, and my god, if you have Ymrit and you're like on if you're using them on the same team together, it is so incredibly strong. And you can see when she's here, she has the range to cover this, but then as soon as she pops the ultimate, she gets even more range, which is just absolutely insane, right? So she has the range to like reach all the way over to this tile. So will Ymrit when he has his ult. So that's just like an insane DPS kill box once they get right here. And then that combined with the, oh my god, I forgot his name. That combined with the Torador and his unyielding and all those sorts of good things with a Carnelian is just a very, very strong team. And then obviously you want to make sure that you bring like a Silas or some other strong marksman that can do some defense ignore, because if you don't, you're probably not going to get much done, right? So they do regroup here and try to get their second attack in. They have some axemen coming in, as well as a tank unit. The tank unit just does not even really get to Torador, right? Like, that was an absolutely insane hold against, like, a level 70 account, certainly, but still, it's you know, it's Guild Wars. So you're going to be facing accounts of all levels, right? So let's also go ahead and take a look at some of the ones I lost, just so you can get a decent idea. So let's go ahead and take a look at the attack versus this, or the defense versus this level 99 account, where his BP is 815,000 people. That is ridiculous. Double my BP. I'd imagine this is going to be a pretty quick death, if I were to take a guess. He also has the Demon Captain Scale Skin Champion, which comes from just farming the absolute crap out of Gear Raid 1. So I imagine this is a little bit of a Kraken for him to have that. That is one that isn't seen a whole lot even still. I certainly am not even close to having it. I have like 2 of the 10 fragments needed. So as you can see, Torador is holding on pretty strong with the help of Carnelian there, right? And then Anora, we did actually still get the Scale Skin Champion all the way down, right? And even still, he's having some issues getting through. Like, you can really just see how much DPS output Anora is capable of there. And if we go ahead and take a look at the DPS breakdown, which we should be able to do, I believe. Come on. I know we lost. Show me this. The stats. As you can see, we did 12 million with her, 16 million with Ymrit, and then 9 million with Silas. So having, you know, an ancient exclusive hero do marginally more damage than her kind of speaks for itself, right? She is so incredibly strong. That being said, though, I hope this guide was helpful for you guys. Let me know if you use Anora and where you have her built, as well as all the stats and that sort of good stuff. I can't remember if I called it out already in this video, but Discord link down in the description if you want to get in a part of that as well. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.